Good afternoon. We're going to get started in just a moment. If you have the opportunity to scan this QR code, it might be to the right presentation. It might not be. I don't know. It's anybody's guess. It's a wacky Wednesday here. So if you have the chance to scan that, I'm going to go ahead and turn off these tunes and we're going to go ahead and get started. For anybody curious, that is the Guardians of the Galaxy radio and Pandora. I listen to it a lot. Right? It's the best soundtrack in the Marvel universe. I don't actually need this microphone. It just makes me feel important. So I'm gonna have it. But I have like a loud teacher voice. Like my mom growing up all the time used to tell me that I was too loud. And then I became a teacher and I was like, now who's right, mom? Okay, so this is a session on restorative practices or restorative conversations in academic settings. I'm holding my clicker upside down again. Restorative conversations, an approach to identifying equitable academic and social skill support. I am Jessica Simpson. Yes, that's my name. I am Jessica Simpson. I am almost famous. If I keep holding this microphone, we never know what might happen today in the Gilroy room. I am the Director of School Climate Leadership and Instructional Services here at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. I've got a really long title. It's why I wear the big shoes, so I can match my title. Without them, I'm like this tall. Doesn't work out. I get to work with these lovely people here in the SCLIS department. Shama Marshall is our coordinator of MTSS. You may have seen her on the schedule. She is doing a session with Shar Perry, our assistant director. We have Alex, she is our manager of PBIS, and Stephanie Tagg, our coordinator of PBIS. If after the session you want any PBIS services or anything like this, you would contact those three people because they would be the ones to deliver it to you. Moving right along. I would be remiss in my duties as a representative of California PBIS Coalition if I didn't start with some learning expectations and behavior norms. The first one is to be respectful, listen to others attentively, be open to others' perspectives, and share your questions. Be responsible, take care of your needs, water, food, restroom. Set your phones to quiet mode and take calls outside, but make yourself comfortable. What do I mean by make yourself comfortable? I mean that if I wasn't the presenter, I wouldn't have these shoes on. That's what I mean. I mean that level of comfort. Make yourself feel good. It's the end of the day. You made it through the day, so you deserve it. Finally, be engaged. Focus on the why, not just the how. Ask what you need to understand and contribute. I have an 11-year-old son. He goes to school just up the street at Orchard, and every day before I drop him off at school, I tell him, have fun and ask good questions. That's your only job at school. I want you to go to school. I want you to have fun. I want you to ask good questions because I know that's good questions. That's where the learning happens. So I want you guys to have fun and ask good questions. We're going to do a mood check on our rubber ducky scale, on a 1 to 9 rubber ducky scale. So we've got number 1 rubber ducky. He is showing up to work. He is ready to go. And then we've got the number 9 ducky who has given up on life. So on a scale of 1 to, I give up, just with your fingers, if you could show me how you're feeling, where you're at. I got a 3, I got some 5s, I got a 2, a 3, a 7, yeah, 4. Okay. I got some pretty attentive duckies. I appreciate that. So I did a session at California PBIS conference in Sacramento last week before that, I never know. And I had a scale up here, and the session right across from mine was a wellness room. So I told anybody who was a 7 to a 9, get up from my session right now, leave and go to that wellness room, get a hug, get what you need, because you don't need to be here for this. So if you are a 7 through a 9 and you need a hug, I'm not a hugger, don't hug me, but I'm sure that there's somebody that you know that will hug you. Oh, we're going to do a 4 corners poll, which means you guys are going to have to get up now. I apologize. I know she got us in here. She made us laugh, and now you're getting up. A, how familiar are you with using restorative practices? A, I am new to the use of restorative practices. A's, you're going to go over there. B, I have heard of restorative practices, but I am unsure how it works or what it is. B's, you're going to go over here. C, I know what restorative practices are. You're going to go over there. And then D, I know what restorative practices are, and I can explain it to someone well. D, you're going to go to that corner. A, B, C, and D. Where are we on the restorative practices scale of A through D? Yes, C is I know what restorative practices are. What's happening there? That's A. A is I'm new. I am a newbie, neophyte. B, I've heard of them, but I'm not sure of how it is, what it is, or how it works. Oh, I have some good practitioners in the back. I will be handing the mic off to you during the training session to take over. All right, so I've got a good amount of I know what restorative practices are. That's great. All right. Now in your corner, turn to an elbow partner or, a shoulder partner and explain why you assessed yourself in this corner. Why did you pick this corner? What's your experience? How are you feeling about this session? I have about 10 seconds to finish up our conversations. We're going to finish up that last sentence and thank your partner and return to your seat. Thank you for the vigorous conversations. Thank your partners before you go to your seat. Oh, your shoes are cute.
Oh, thank you.
Mine aren't. Okay, I wanted to take a temperature of the room and have everybody kind of get acquainted before we got started. As I said, I am the Director of School Climate Leadership and Instructional Services. Prior to being the Director of School Climate Leadership and Instructional Services, I was the coordinator of positive behavior interventions and supports here at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And before that, I was the specialist of PBIS here. Before that, I was director of student services. Before that, I was an elementary school assistant principal. Before that, I taught language arts in middle school for 13 years. So that's kind of where I live and reside, is that 13-year long stretch as being a middle school educator. And if you know any middle school educators, you know that they are just big middle schoolers themselves. They never really grew up. Neither did I. Before being a middle school educator, as I said, my mother always told me that I was too loud. And my teachers always said, Jessica is so bossy. Now, my mother realizes that I had to be loud to be a teacher. And I want to sit every one of those teachers down and tell them, Jessica is not bossy. Jessica is the boss. So when you have a little Jessica in your class and she is loud and bossy, understand that she is that way for a purpose and a reason. She deserves to be listened to, or at least not put out of class every other day, because I didn't learn anything in the hallway. We're going to start today with an agenda. We're going to talk about classroom community. So how do we include the Jessicas? We're going to talk about academic conversation, and then we're going to talk a little bit about social emotional competencies. Our goal, because I always like to have a learning goal, is to engage in conversation around fostering classroom community to allow for rigorous academic conversation in a social, emotionally safe environment. And we're going to talk about what does that mean and why is it important. I can get this to work. There we go. Classroom community. So what is a classroom community? Just another temperature check. How many administrators do I have in the room? Thank you. How many classroom educators do I have in the room? We appreciate your service. How many counselors or social workers do I have in the room? TOSAs? Okay, all right. Just getting a feel for my environment. This is about fostering a positive classroom environment, and these are practices that are tier 1 practices. They are for any and all and everyone. This is a video that the first 15 times I saw it, it made me cry. I'm gonna try not to cry today, but you never know.
Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom, no talking, quietly. We need you in.
Why do you think that makes us forgive?
Got my number. What's your name? Jordan. What's your last name? Carter.
School is hard enough.
Come on in, sit down by your desk and begin writing.
This kind of stuff should make it harder.
I said quietly, please. Who's talking? Is it you, Sophie? Don't let me hear.
Don't believe me? Please just watch.
I'm not up here for me, I'm up here for you. Pay attention. Okay? Now somebody answer me. Somebody needs to answer me really fast.
Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, the teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
Moment by moment.
Daddy, your students' behavior yesterday in the lunchroom, it was terrible. Next time, silent lunch.
Did you hear that? Stay in line and catch a ball. I'm not playing.
If this is education, we're in trouble. Bye, Miss McGarrity. Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. The way it is now, 2 of the 3 of us will never be able to really read. It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan, how you doing? Good.
Everyone we hear out our names can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead, put your number in.
So what is this? Not is.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right.
Teach us what we need to know. That's how we get smarter.
Well, good morning, Sophie, Janicia, and Jordan.
And when you talk with us and teach us, give us bigger and bigger words.
Now, what I'd like you to do, children, is turn around and converse with your neighbor and discuss where the mother might have gone.
Words that we can use to read and understand. She is praying for evil, so she has that light. And that will take us places we can never reach without it.
Remember, we're entering the learning zone. Now, how can we show our respect to the children and teachers who are working?
We can walk quietly.
Yes. Okay, kids, so what I'd like you to do is continue writing your narrative, documenting your emotions. If you were the baby owl and your mother abandoned you in the nest.
What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best.
You would have stayed and assisted them in whatever they needed.
Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be. Why would you want to silence us?
So that was just a little video on the experience that the student has. I am in a class for continuous improvement cycle. For the continuous improvement cycle, it's called I don't know, improvement cycle basics. And the first thing that we started off talking about was the experience for the user. In this case, the user is the student. What's the user's experience when they come to school? I'll tell you a quick little story. I had a student in my class and he got on all of my nerves. I did not like this child. And I complained about him endlessly. Like just did not get along with him. I didn't, his personality and mine, they just didn't get along and I couldn't figure out what to do. So one day I was complaining very loudly to the math. She was like a consultant for our district. Now I don't teach math. I'm just complaining to this lady because I needed an emotional hug. And she said, why don't you follow that kid around one day? What? Why would I do that? She said, yeah, just follow him around from class to class, see what his school day is like. Okay. I mean, that's not going to make me like him, but okay. So I followed him around all day, but I didn't let him know I was following him because just as much as I didn't like him, he probably didn't like me. So I made it look like I was, just visiting with other teachers or whatever. And at the end of the day, I realized why it was that he acted the way he did in my class. He was not passing any of his classes. None of his teachers were nice to him. It was just a really rough day. And I was like, he does this every day. So I made it a point to really, really be nice to him. Hey man, how you doing? Welcome to the class. Have a seat. Da, 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 da. Did I like him anymore? Not really, but I empathized with him because I realized what his classroom environment must have been like. And I made it a point to have my class be the one class that kids wanted to come to, whether they were successful with the curriculum or not. So it's all about building that environment. What are some practices we can use to intentionally build that environment? The reduction of punitive responses to behaviors, those exclusionary responses, get out of my room, or you're suspended, or you can't participate in this activity. The reduction in the use of those builds classroom community. Explicitly teaching and acknowledging expected behavior. This one is really big in PBIS. We often say, especially in the middle school world, you're old enough, you should know better. Obviously they don't, because if they know better, they would do better. At least that's what I think. So taking the time to teach what you want to see, model what you want to see, and then when you do see it, acknowledge that positive behavior. Focus resources on building skills to help students succeed. How can we help students be more successful? And how is that built out into things like our SIPSA or our LCAP or our lesson plans or our unit plans? And then provide consistent instructional strategies for behavioral errors. Instructional strategies for behavior. The first time I heard that, it wasn't about me. Thank you. It was about one of my teaching buddies, and she was having a hard time in the class, and the principal asked her, what instructional strategies do you have in place to mitigate some of these behaviors? And we both kind of looked at each other like, she's talking to you. I don't know what she's talking about. But then we looked into it and we were like, oh, you can teach behavior like you teach reading and math? Did not know that. So putting some of those strategies in place to teach it like you teach your content area. One of those ways, one of the first ways, is your expectations, your rules, right? Your classroom rules or your classroom behavior expectations. I like to call them classroom norms. I don't like to call them rules because young Jessica liked to break rules. So I figured that there's a young Jessica in my class. So I'm not calling it a rule because somebody's going to break it just to break it. Are those expectations, are those norms, are they reasonable? I want you to think of putting yourself back in whatever grade was your favorite grade or whatever grade that you teach. I want you to think about the rules of your school. Can you think about a rule that was utterly ridiculous and you're like, I don't understand why we had that rule? Would anybody like to share their rule that was ridiculous? Yes. Saturday school for chewing gum. That makes no sense. Anybody else got one? Yes.
Stop sign. And if anybody raised their hand or wanted to talk, that stop sign.
Oh, that's rude. Yeah, I don't like that. Your rules have to be reasonable. Why is that behavior expectation there? Is it for safety reasons? Is it to support the learning environment? Or is it because you want control of the classroom and you feel that this is going to give you control? If it's for control, we need to find a different way to have control. Setting rules is going to set them up for failure. Is it equitable? Is this rule something that is equitable? When we came back from the pandemic, students had been at home doing school at home in front of their computer in their pajamas, eating snacks, having a great time, right? I'm at home. I can use the restroom when I want. I can have snacks when I want. And I come back to school and now I can't eat. Oh man, that's hard. Is that rule reasonable, equitable? And is it something that you can consistently follow and teach and reinforce? Because if it's not, then maybe it shouldn't be your rule or behavior expectation. And then finally, making sure that it is something that you can consistently teach. Really, really making sure and asking yourself, of my behavior expectations, do they meet these criteria? The next thing that you can do to build that classroom community is behavior-specific praise. Behavior-specific praise is one of the easiest things that you can do to modify somebody's behavior. After you see a behavior that you really like, you say, thank you for doing X, Y, or Z. It really helps QRS, and you're very descriptive and specific. This works on both students and partners at home who don't know that their job and responsibility is to take out the trash because I'm not doing it. Thank you, Alexander, for taking out the trash. It helps a lot where I don't have to worry about going outside. You know what happens then? I don't have to keep saying it and the trash keeps getting taken out. It works on adults. It works on children. Thank you, Sam, for bringing your supplies to class. It really helps out when we don't have to stop and get your supplies. You want to strive for a 5-to-1 ratio, meaning you want to say 5 positive things for every behavior correction that you have to give. That sounds like a lot. It feels like a lot. It feels cumbersome, but it's scientifically based that when you're building a relationship with someone, anyone, you want to hit that 5-to-1 ratio. Some people say 4-to-1, but it can't be 1-to-1. You have to praise the behavior that you want to see more than you correct the behavior you don't want to see. This is an example of behavior-specific praise. When you give behavior-specific praise, you want to tie it to the rule or behavior norm that the behavior is matched to. Sergio, thank you for emailing your question after the lesson. That was a great example of responsibility. Sergio now has a very specific example of how to show that he is responsible. And he knows that if he shows his responsibility, he's going to get that praise. So what are some of the social emotional learning benefits of some of these practices? If you are familiar with this hierarchy of need, raise your hand. If you know who this is, Maslow. Okay. So this is Maslow, and this is our SEL, right? Our competencies, our Castle core competencies. So these Castle core competencies and these Maslow's hierarchy of need, they align with each other. Self-awareness is esteem. Relationship skills is love and belonging. Social awareness is safety. So that aligns with that. But what does that look like? This is just theory. You're just telling me that people need to feel loved and belonging and all of those things. And I already know that. What does that look like in my classroom? Well, if you're a PBIS school, if you do PBIS practices, the 5-to-1 ratio is self-awareness and esteem. In restorative practices, what we're talking about today is effective statements. I feel blank when blank. I feel sad when the cafeteria runs out of oatmeal in the morning because I really like oatmeal. That's an effective statement. Relationship skills, love and belonging. So right here, and then our relationship skills on our wheel. PBIS practice is positive greetings at the door when you stand at the door and your kids come in and you have a little routine, a little fist pump, a little something, or you just say their name. Hi, it's so glad to see you. That's what that looks like in practice. In restorative practice, that's proactive circles. Some of you might see them as morning meeting circles. Some of them, they're checkout circles. They're circles where you just talk about how you feel that day or do a quick little check-in. It's not necessarily to fix a problem or repair harm. Last but not least, social awareness and safety align. And then we have a discipline flow chart, which is a PBIS practice wherein you specifically outline the contextually inappropriate behavior you don't want to see and what happens when you see it. This is restorative practices, those restorative questions. What happened? How did you feel? Those 4 questions that you ask after harm, that's where those go. So this is how it all aligns. It's not an extra thing, right? Restorative practices isn't an extra thing. It's a practice that you embed in the systems that already exist. Yes, thank you for the arrows. This is a quote that I always use when I talk about restorative practices, because sometimes it's hard to see it from somebody else's point of view. Sometimes we get stuck in how we feel. When you really listen to another person from their point of view and reflect back to them that understanding, it's like giving them emotional oxygen. Think about that for a second. Not only are you listening to somebody's own point of view, you're telling them, I hear you. Not with judgment, not I hear you, but I hear you. I understand that this has got to be difficult for you or that you're having a hard time. Let's work through this. So restorative practices, as you know, is not a curriculum. You're not going to find a restorative practice book. Well, you might. But you're not going to find a set of curriculum wherein you read and then the students do something and there's worksheets. There's not a curriculum to it. It is a practice. It's actually becomes a way of being. I am very well versed in restorative practices and people know that about me. So when I'm having a problem with somebody and I go to somebody else to complain, which by the way is a bad habit, just go to that person and complain. When I have a problem with somebody, I go to somebody else and complain. I'm like, I can't believe she did that. I can't believe she talks to me that way. Everybody I know will say, well, have you had a restorative conversation with her? I don't want the right answer right now. Okay. I want to be mad. Becomes a way of life. It's a rooted belief that behavior is best addressed through collectively identifying the harm done by one's actions and taking steps to repair that harm. It's not about blame. It's not about punishment. It is about repairing the harm and moving forward. That's the hard part. You're not going to get your lick back with restorative practices. You're going to have to learn from something and move on. Restorative practices are equally important in proactively building the relationships and skills needed to support one another and collectively address the challenges they face. So you can't have something happen in class and say, okay, now we're going to use restorative practices to fix it, if you never practice that practice in the first place. That's not going to work either. So it's something that you have to do constantly and maintain. One of the ways to maintain that is the proactive circles that I talked about, like the positive greetings at the door, the PBIS practice. You can use them on a regular basis. They use various elements of rituals to make the process feel predictable and safe for students. For some students, this idea of opening up and talking about their feelings and how they really, really feel is going to be hard. Middle school kids do not want to tell you that they're vulnerable. They don't want to tell you that their feelings were hurt. And that's actually what they were feeling when they punched Johnny in the face because Johnny said that their shoes were whack. No, I'm just mad. No, you're not. You're not mad. You're hurt. And that's why you're doing that. But it takes a moment for them to get there. So it's something that you have to practice regularly. You can use a talking piece. Questions may reflect the issue to be discussed, but don't need to guide the process, and they are flexible and serve various purposes. So today we're going to talk about restorative practices in an academic setting, because as I said when I began, I am not a hugger. I'm not playing. I am not lovey-dovey. I'm not touchy-feely. I'm not that girl. When I was a classroom educator, I was known to be, I don't want to say strict, but we're going to say strict and stern, but the kids, they felt loved and respected because we did these restorative practices. And how I started them on it was I started practicing it with the academic skills necessary to have these conversations. So how do we use our language to get to our feelings? This is an example of a proactive circle. And now I have to walk to the computer because I'm sure if I push this button, it ain't gonna work. Yeah, so I thought.
They come in, they're giggling, they're laughing. And there's just like a lot of kind of like giddy, intense energy. And then the circle and their relationships with each other actually kind of like quiet something in them and allow them to be more present for each other.
When we do circles here, before we do the circles, we sit down and like plan the opening ceremony. My great hope is to laugh as much as I cry, to get my work done and try to love someone. And I have no courage to resent the love in between my angel. And in high school, especially, like, we don't have enough, connections with each other. Sometimes, everybody's all focused on the work and, stress on home and stuff like that. And circles create a space where people can talk about their feelings or how they're doing home life. Now we will review our class values. The first one was being open. The other one is respect. When we say our values, we respect each other and stuff like that. Because, we all are still human and people get sensitive sometimes. So we're trying to make sure, that everybody feels comfortable and then with their feelings hurt. Okay, now we will share an object that relates to hope. I hurt being Black. Firstly, because I hope that everybody is proud of who we are. I got this play to win thing from a boyfriend. We exchanged bags on top, and this brings hope because it just keeps me going.
My mom made this necklace for me, and it represents hope because she never had time to do anything for herself. They're being asked to be vulnerable to a group of people, which is kind of like antithetical of what it's like to be a teenager, which is what's the best way to hide right now. So the first thing that I do is I share as deeply as I possibly can. I feel like if I can share deeply and from my heart and listen really attentively to other students, they're looking at me to see how I'm behaving.
I have you guys give me a lot of hope, stuff like that. Our advisory is like a family. I've been through police brutality, tragedies and stuff like that. And instead of me being depressed about like I know I can come in and talk to my community, they understand. And most of the time, if it's something I'm going through, they've probably already been through it before.
All right, so that was a little video showing some restorative circles. So we're going to have a turn and talk, maybe. No, we're not going to have a turn and talk. That's rude. Okay, this is called a say means matter. I want you to think back to the video and what is one quote or something that was said that you connected to? What was said? What did it say? And then I want you to think about what does that mean? Can you put it in your own words? Maybe it was something that the teacher said, maybe it was something the student said. Can you put that in your own words? What does it mean? And why does that matter? What's the impact on your practice as an educator, whatever your setting is, as an administrator, as a classroom educator? What does it matter? So what did the video say? What does that mean? And why does that matter? And I'm going to give you some time to talk at your tables, turn and talk to a partner, walk across the room and talk. Say means matter. Ready, steady, go. Okay, I'm going to bring you back in about 30 seconds. You got about 10 seconds to finish up that last little bit of conversation. Ten seconds. All right, I'm going to bring you back. Thank your partners for the rigorous academic conversation you've had. Thank you for reflecting on the video. That video is pretty old. You'll see that it's still called Restorative Justice. Those children are probably adults by now, but I always think that it's very poignant to hear from somebody actually in the process of what it feels like and how the logistics of everything work. And there we go. So speaking of talking, the talking that you did with each other, the talking that these students do in circles, and bringing restorative practices to the academic realm, why does talking matter? What is so important about the way that we talk to each other? It helps you articulate your thinking. So the more that you talk, the more refined your thoughts become. The better you're able to express yourself, but you have to practice. Interaction and collaboration support deep understanding. You want to get deep into your content and deep into your curriculum. You don't want to have just a surface knowledge of something. You want to be able to talk about it. Have you ever talked to a kid about, I don't know, literature or their homework, and you get this very surface level conversation of, oh, we read, I don't know, Madame Butterfly in class, and it was about this and and that conversation lasts maybe 2 minutes. You ever asked a 7-year-old about who their favorite Pokemon is? Let me tell you right now, you are in for a treat. They are going to tell you everything that they know about that Pokemon, about their evolution. Don't let it be Eevee. I don't know if you know what Pokemon I do. Don't let it be Evie, because Evie evolves into a whole bunch of different things depending on what Evie feels at that moment, and you will learn everything about it. Everything. That is a deep understanding. We want our students to be able to have those deep conversations about our standards or our content area, because I'm sure that as you were going through undergrad and maybe you got a degree in English or maybe you got a degree in math. I have a degree in secondary English language arts. I can tell you almost everything about young adult literature there ever was. And you sit down and you ask me, how do you feel about holes? Oh, come on. Pull it out, pull up a chair. I'm going to talk to you about holes and the whole story and the yell nets and the all of that. We're going to talk about it. Then we're going to talk about the movie. We're going to go real, real deep because I have a deep understanding of that. It allows you to clarify, refine, and apply your thinking. And that's the important skill. These skills, talking, conversations, is transferable. Now I can take this conversation and I can talk about math. The last district I was at was really big on math talk. Is anybody familiar with math talks are? Where kids sit down and talk about math. Now, I am not a math person. So when I see kindergartners sitting down and talking about what adding actually means, and they can't multiply, but they can tell you what multiply means. And I'm like, wow, because I can't tell you what multiply means, and I'm a grown person. So those math talks, it's a transferable skill. Structured talk builds student confidence and competence, and that's where we get the SEL piece. That confidence and competence, because now you can talk about it. Have you ever taught a lesson and you knew that they didn't get it? You knew they didn't get it. And you said, what questions do you have for me? All right, here's your independent work time. Go. Now what? I don't get it. Okay, cool. What don't you get? I don't know. Awesome. Great. So let's start from the beginning. And this time when I said, do you have any questions? As soon as you don't get it, raise your hand. That is a skill. That's a learned skill. And if they don't practice it, they can't do it. And the more that they don't practice it and the more they can't do it, the less and less confident they become in class and the least likely they are to do it. You see how that circle does not help you at all? So we talk. Nope. This is backward. You're going backward. Well, I'm holding it upside down. Academic conversations are defined as sustained and purposeful conversations, usually around a school or academic topic. So not only talk is important, now we want to think about academic talk. How do we talk in an academic way? Why do we develop this academic language? To communicate, collaborate, think critically, solve problems, build relationships, support ideas, read and write academic texts. You notice that this comes last? Right here. When we're having our kids read and write academic texts or write, and we haven't given them the opportunity to practice any of these things, when you get to the writing part, listen, I love teaching. I love kids. I miss them. Do you know what finally did it? The nail that just was finally in the coffin was like, I'm going to go get this admin credential. Essays. I could not read not another thesis statement. I couldn't do it anymore because I know we talked about how to write this thesis statement. I know we did. And here I am, 2 glasses of wine later, still reading the same. My name is Dylan, and today I'm going to talk to you about Pokemon. Oh my God, that's not what we talked about. Academic conversation. It requires you communicate. It requires that they collaborate. They think critically, they solve problems, they build relationships, support ideas before they read and write academically. Every single time you ask them to read and write academically, every single time. Otherwise, you're gonna get, hi, my name is Dylan and I'm here to write about turtles today. So how do we incorporate that into our practice in a practical manner? Because we only have so much time in the classroom. These are 5 core skills for academic conversations that you can practice around academic topics, or you can practice about football scores. Elaborate and clarify, support ideas with examples, build on and or challenge a partner's idea, paraphrasing, and the hardest one, synthesizing conversation points. All of these are skills that built up. Now your students are ready to write. Now your students are ready to collaborate. Now your students are ready to read, but they have to practice talking first. This is a placemat. If you have the PowerPoint, it's on there. This placemat gives you sentence frames. We know that sentence frames help our English language learners. Sentence frames help our students who are a little less confident in the classroom. Sentence frames help everyone. So we have our academic conversation placemats with our prompts, our questions. So how do you ask a question that's leading the person who's answering to paraphrase? How do you ask a question that leads to elaborate and clarify? How do you ask the question to lead to the skill? These questions are generic. You can plug them into any subject. So this is an example of accountable talk. Accountable talk uses some of these elements. There are sentence stems. There are rules of engagement. So we're going to watch a quick example of what accountable talk looks like in the classroom. Hear it? No worries. Let's see if I can turn it up. Nope, that's as loud as it gets. So I could have done that, but we're gonna they're using sentence frames. I agree with you because what I'm hearing you say is I would like to add, and they're going around in a conversation and just having this conversation led by each other. No. So academic conversations and using sentence stems and accountable talk were always my favorite part of teaching because it meant that I just got to listen, and I got to listen to these little great minds have little great ideas and talk to each other and even disagree with each other. So that is the first portion of what we're going to talk about. And now we're going to go into some restorative practices, but before we do, on our painting scale, Bob Ross to the scream. How was everybody doing? 1 to 9. I got a 5, 5, 1. Okay. 2, 4. All right. 3, 5, 2. Good. All right. Because I got any 7s to 8s, I got to call in reinforcements. Okay. So restorative practices. He who questions much shall learn much and retain much. Circles have a structure to them. It's not just a circle. They can be in sequential format or they can go from person to person. When you're first starting out, you want to have them go in sequence and all around your circle order so that everybody has an opportunity to talk and share. One person speaks at a time, and the opportunity to speak moves in one direction around the circle. So one person gets to say something and then everybody else gets to say something. If that person has something else to say, they got to wait their turn. Each person must wait to speak and no one may interrupt. Optionally, a small talking piece, an object that is easily held and passed from person to person may facilitate this process, as exampled in this video that I hope we can hear.
I have something from school that made me think of you. It's a feeling stick. Whoever's holding the feeling stick has permission to say whatever he or she is feeling without being judged. I'll go first. I feel like I want to know what you're feeling. Believe it or not, that's not the first time someone's broken my feeling stick. I have a travel size.
So you can use a talking piece to go around in your circle. I personally don't because germs, but if you want to pass something around for people to talk with, that can facilitate the process. It helps with the littles because it's a physical reminder that I can only talk when I have the bear. Uh-oh, what did I do? Oh, I already did that. Slideshow. Next. And again. It's typically the sequential circle, the one that goes in one sequence, is structured around topics or questions raised by the circle facilitator. So the person facilitating the circle raises the topic. Today, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. Because it strictly forbids that back and forth, it requires a great deal of decorum. People learn how to talk. If you have a class that's jumping all over each other constantly, this is one way to teach them a new way of talking to each other that doesn't do that. And it maximizes the opportunity for the quiet voices, you know, those people who don't say anything in your class. Now they have the opportunity to have the space and place to say so. And not only do they get to talk, they get to be heard. Because a lot of times those kids aren't talking because they feel like they're not being heard. Aw, sad horns. So sequential circle encourages people to listen more and talk less. And this used to be a video of Aaron Burr telling Alexander Hamilton to talk less, smile more, but it's not there anymore. Sad. Okay, I'll move on. I'll get over it. Maybe I won't. So what does this look like in a classroom? What is the practical application of all of this theory? Yes, Jessica, that sounds great. How do I do this in my class? Well, this is how I did it. I would put this on the board, like this projection on the board, every Monday and every Friday. Monday at the beginning of the class, Friday at the end of the class. And it starts with less talk. So we sit in our circle and you ask the person to your left your favorite thing about fall. So what's your favorite thing about fall? Thank you. My favorite thing about fall, da, 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 da. And then they share out what the person on their left said. They don't tell you, they don't tell the circle what their favorite thing is. They're telling you what the person said to them. So they have to listen. It's not about them giving the answer, it's about them listening to the answer and then giving that. Then I would ask them a question. Which is the most important when reading a story? Plot, characters, setting, or theme? So this is not about your feelings, but we are sitting in a circle. We are following the decorum. We are using restorative practices to build a community. The first person is given their sentence frame. My favorite part of a story is blank because blank. So any story or the story that we're reading, what's your favorite part? And then the next 6 people to respond are not answering the question. The next 6 people to respond are responding to the answer. So now they're talking to each other in a sequential circle because soon as I take off the sequential circle guardrails, now they know how to talk to each other. And it's not just one person answering the question and then another person answering the question and another person answering the question. They answer the question and then they talk to each other, building up those skills. And I gave them the tools necessary. I started with sentence frames, these sentence frames. Then I gave them more options as they got better and better at it. And then at the end, this was on a Monday. At the end of the circle, I let everybody stand up and I asked the question, what's one thing you're looking forward to this week? And when you answered the question, you could sit down. So now the sequential circle is over. Now responding to each other is over. Now I'm actually doing an SEL check-in without asking you how you're feeling. Tell me what you're looking forward to this week. It also gave me a clue as an educator, what I'm going to ask that kid about on Wednesday, just to check in. Hey, how'd science go? You said you were doing a project on Tuesday. You blew up the lab. That sounds great. And just keep going. And you have something to talk about. And I didn't have to fish for it. They gave it to me. This is another one. Did you have a good week? Yes or no? Real quick. Why is it important to revise writing before you turn it in? Very open-ended question. Then we talked about what edit means and what revise means. It's important to revise your writing because. And then at this point, I no longer have the numbers, so we don't have to number off in class, but you do know that only one person's answering this question and the rest of you are responding. So just pick a response and go with it. This was a Friday. What is one thing you're looking forward to this weekend? So now we've checked out. So we checked in and we checked out. I built community and I talked about my topic. how will you utilize, or how can you utilize some of these practices in your classroom or school? So we've talked about our check-in circles. We've talked about our sequential circles. We've talked about using a talking piece. What's one thing that you've seen that, hey, maybe I can try that? And you're not going to have 6 minutes. You're probably going to have 2. Turn and talk to your tables about what's one thing you've seen so far that I want to take this back. And it doesn't have to be the circles. It can be anything you've seen. I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation. Maybe just a couple responses. How will you utilize these restorative practices in your classroom or schools? What do you see, or what did you notice and you were like, oh, I could take that back and next week I can start doing this? Anything that you saw? Yes.
That we take back these next week.
Mhm.
Definitely the template that you gave them, let's talk in those circles.
Let's talk in the circles.
Like, yes. And doing that before you do the academic reading and the academic writing.
Mhm.
It's really a good fact that one person shares and others don't have to answer the question. It's adding to that. And that you still can say face by say, oh, I didn't quite understand what you're saying. Could you please repeat?
Mhm.
Or I disagree, or I agree, or I'd like to add on because I have more to say. And it gives them all a piece to put in.
Yes.
That's really strong.
Okay.
For each of their.
Great. So taking back some of those sentence frames and the idea of let's put it on the board and let's talk about talking before we dive into any of this content. Anything else we saw? Talking sticks? Yes. Mhm.
Like our keynote speaker said that growth mindset is good with staff, right? The adults, not the students.
Mhm.
So that's the first staff first. Yeah.
Did you see the next slide after this one?
That's what I just said. I have practices with our students when our staff at our school can't practice it with us. So.
I planted these people. I didn't plant them. That is exactly the next place that we are going with this, because you are 1000% right. If the staff isn't doing this, the students most certainly will not do this. We're going to go on to that on the next slide. But before we do, what are some routines, or how can you develop routines and procedures that create this classroom environment for academic conversations? What are some things that you can do routinely or that you can practice that will build or develop them? You model it.
And remind, review, as you know, some adults and kids, they need 5 reminders, some need 20, some need.
Yes.
Every day.
We have to model and remind them and live it. Yes. Mm. Yeah.
And then also in my class, you never have to walk in
Mhm.
because that is the right answer.
Right.
And so the different answer, I always start saying, you are right when you need to, when we're talking, I think that is the right answer.
Mhm.
It just may not be the answer to this question, but just like you go ahead and slide. I can see why you found that I wrote that font on the board really wrong. It's not an application. I've got money.
Mhm.
I see that, so that it's not bringing that negative attention, that they can always have it.
Right. That positive reinforcement of having a voice. That's important.
And they have this 5, 10, 15 pages of disciplinary action.
Mhm.
And then the time I look at them and say, how many times and they start crying.
Mhm.
These are high school.
Yeah.
And that it's like, so they're just, and I don't want to never feel that.
Yes. And part of that, what you're talking about, that building that community, that trust that they have, that if I don't have the right answer, I'm not going to be ridiculed. That's something that that's something also that has to be taught, because even as adults, we laugh at each other when we're wrong or do something silly. Like, I like to ice skate, and I took my son ice skating for the first time when he was maybe 10. And when I tell you he was not good at it, I was like, are you sure you're my kid? Because the first time I got on some ice skates, I was like, I am good at this. And he was not. And right before he got out there, he was like, if I fall, are you going to laugh at me? Yes. But only after I make sure you're okay and I pick you up, because it's funny a little bit. As long as you're not hurt, it's funny. And that's something that we do as adults. But to kids, it's not funny. And giggling at the wrong answer, that's just us being insecure, right? I'm glad that's not me. I'm glad I don't have to give that answer. I'm going to laugh so that maybe nobody will call on me. Or for whatever reason we decide to laugh. But then kids get that ingrained in them and now they won't say anything and they don't want to be there. Can you imagine being in a class where you know everything you say is wrong, or at least that's what you've told yourself? That is the narrative in your head. Everything I say in this class and everything I do is wrong. I don't want to be here. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to go. And it might be something subtle, like I got to go to the bathroom. Can I go to the office? I need to see the counselor. And it might be something not so subtle, like I'm going to pick up this chair and I'm going to throw it all the way over there. I'm going to flip this table up. I have seen so many kids destroy classrooms. And when I first started, however many years ago that was, I didn't see that. And it became later in my career that these students, and thank you. And one of the things that we say in our little social, no, stop it. And our school climate world is that all behavior is communication. So what are they communicating us? Okay, all the alarms. What are they trying to communicate to us? Okay, now we're going to go on to the next slide that I know everybody wants to know about. This is a little bit about creating a safe environment to open and honest communication fosters the needs of all members of the classroom community, even the grown-ups. So he's going to talk a little bit about restorative practices for the adults at a school.
Circle is done in a structured manner. It's very different than the classroom experience that they have at their points during the day. It kind of invites them to be exploring and learning in a different way. Every circle will follow the same basic cadence.
All right, we're gonna start by doing our true north.
It will always start with what we call true north practice.
Start by taking one silent deep breath in and then slowly letting it out.
It's a mindfulness-based practice for everybody in the circle to let go of the busy day, while they focus their attention on each other.
We are going to do a weather check-in. Who would like to start us off?
And then it moves into a check-in.
Today I'm feeling foggy, I'm sleepy.
Everybody has to check in, even if it's minimal.
I feel sunny because it's Friday.
Being able to name their emotions, I think it humanizes everybody involved. It really helps us see each other as people who have feelings.
And then we move into what we call work.
It's a little bit frustrated.
So this is the biggest step of the whole relationship. Like you need to let Jeremy know that you understand why he felt frustrated. Communities need to work together in order to solve problems. And so people have the opportunity to bring work into circle.
Examples of work are relationship work with your peers or with your teacher. And we might have people take responsibility for something that had an impact on our community. We also do activities like sharing your life story, reflecting on your values.
Sawyer, are you ready to do your presentation?
The topic I investigated was religion.
Scholars really push themselves and put a lot of effort and thought into the work. You see them starting to become more thoughtful about themselves, more self-aware.
This experience helped me learn that I can be kinder to people with different perspectives.
Then we always end with appreciations.
You always make me laugh. You always kept trying to get better.
It's a way for the community to appreciate the positive impacts we have on each other.
I'd like to appreciate you for talking to me over spring break. It's like a mini family. It's a place where you know you're safe. I don't talk about my feelings much, but in circle I can, because I know I can trust them.
I think having the adults do the practice themselves and already know the importance of it is our main strategy.
In through your nose and out through your mouth. Allow your breath to anchor you.
Adults drive this type of work in the community.
Stephen, would you mind kicking us off?
There's some work that I've done with kids in this past week that I need to bring the circle. In the circle today, I did a process called taking responsibility, which is used for repairing a relationship with the community as a whole. You step into the circle and you own whatever action you took. I recognize that my mistake put you in a really uncomfortable position. I have been at schools where if something were done and not talked about, it kind of festered. Here, and you positively work to rebuild the relationship moving forward. I commit to like using the systems that are in place and thinking before I act in such a way. I ask kids to do it every day. And I think that's why Valor works. It's because like everything the kids are asked to do, the adults are expected to do as well.
Can you imagine working at a school where you messed up with another teacher and you in front of everybody said I messed up and I'm sorry, and that other person was like, yeah, man, that's okay. We're gonna work together and figure it out. Would that not be awesome? That would be a wonderful place to work. So think about that. You have to, in order to live this, in order to do it, you've got to live it and you've got to do it. All right, we are going to move. No, we already saw that. All right. If you would like to schedule a follow-up meeting, if you would like to meet with any of the members of the PBIS team here at the SECOE who are well-versed in our restorative practices, or PBIS or MTSS or school climate, for culturally relevant and sustaining practices, they do a lot of stuff. You can use that QR code, or you can go to the book with PBIS or email pbis@secoe.org and somebody will get back to you. They are always looking to make connections. We love to work with teachers. We love to work with teacher teams. We love to work with administrators. We just love the work that we do, and we do the work that we love. And that is all I have for you on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.